The morning sun rose over Jeju Island like it had done for thousands of years. The light touched the green hills and the blue ocean. It warmed the old stone walls of the orphanage where children were already awake and playing in the garden. Jinho stood at the kitchen window and watched them. He was 67 years old now. His hair had turned white and his hands shook sometimes when he poured tea. But his eyes were still sharp. They were the eyes of a man who had seen things he wished he could forget. His wife Suman came up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. She did not need to speak. After 40 years together, they understood each other without words. Outside, a girl named Yuna was teaching the younger children how to fold paper cranes. She was 12 years old, with short black hair and a smile that could light up any room. Jinho had found her 7 years ago, abandoned at a train station with nothing but a torn blanket. Now she was the big sister to every child in the orphanage. She reminds me of our daughter, Suman said softly. Jinho nodded. Their daughter had died in an accident when she was only 8. That was 30 years ago. The pain never really went away. It just became quieter over time. This orphanage was their way of healing. They could not save their own child, but they could give other children a home. 847 children lived here now. Some were babies, some were teenagers about to leave for university. All of them called Jinho and Suman grandmother and grandfather. 2,000 years ago, humanity had made a choice. After a terrible war that nearly destroyed them, they decided to stop fighting. They put away their weapons. They closed their military bases. They told the galaxy that Earth wanted only peace. The other species laughed at first. They called humans weak and foolish. But as centuries passed, they simply forgot about Earth. Humans became farmers and teachers and artists. They built schools and hospitals and parks. They raised children and grew old and died in their beds instead of on battlefields. The Valoran Empire did not understand this. They ruled 9 star systems with an iron fist. Their empress, a cruel woman named Vorath, believed that power was the only thing that mattered. When her advisors told her that Earth had refused to pay tribute, she saw an opportunity. They are cowards, she said to her war council. We will teach the galaxy what happens to cowards. She ordered a single strike cruiser to fly to Earth. Not to invade, just to send a message. The ship arrived on a Tuesday morning. It appeared in the sky above Jeju Island without warning. The children in the orphanage garden looked up and pointed. They had never seen an alien ship before. Some of them thought it was beautiful. Yuna felt something cold in her chest. She did not know why, but she was suddenly afraid. She started gathering the younger children and pushing them toward the building. Inside, she said. Everyone inside now. But there was no time. The ship fired once. A beam of blue light came down from the sky. It hit the orphanage and everything around it. The building exploded into dust and fire. The garden turned to ash. The trees became black skeletons. 847 children died in less than 3 seconds. Jinho had thrown himself over Yuna at the last moment. His body took the force of the blast. When Yuna opened her eyes, she was lying in a crater of smoking dirt. The old man was on top of her. His back burned and bleeding. He was still breathing, but barely. Grandfather, she whispered. He could not answer. His eyes were closed and his face was twisted in pain. Yuna crawled out from under him. She looked around at what remained of her home. There was nothing left. Just broken stones and scattered ashes. The paper cranes she had been folding were gone. The children she had been teaching were gone. Everything was gone. She did not scream. She did not cry. She just sat in the ashes and stared at the sky where the alien ship was already flying away. The attack was broadcast across the galaxy. The Valoran Empire wanted everyone to see what they had done. They wanted every species to understand that resistance was pointless. On Earth, people watched the footage in silence. They saw the orphanage disappear. They saw the list of names scroll across their screens. 847 children. The youngest was only 3 months old. The oldest was 17. For 1 full day, no one spoke. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Then something changed. Supreme Commander Taewoo was a calm man who had never seen war in his life. His job was mostly ceremonial. Earth's military was small and weak, meant only for parades and ceremonies. But on that day, He stood before the World Council and did something that had not been done in 2,000 years. He read the names, all 847 of them, one by one. It took 4 hours. The council members sat in complete silence as he spoke each name clearly and slowly. Some of them wept, some of them could not look up from the floor. When he finished, Taewoo set down the paper. His hands were steady, his voice was flat. "Open the vault," he said. The council members looked at each other. Some of them were confused. They had never heard of the vault. But the older ones, the ones who knew the secret history, turned pale. "Commander," one of them whispered, "are you certain? Once we open it, we cannot close it again." "I am certain." Across the galaxy, the Valoran Empire was celebrating. Empress Vorath held a feast in her palace. She laughed and drank wine and accepted praise from her admirals. They told her that Earth would surely surrender now. They told her that the humans were finished, but then something strange happened. Earth went silent. Every human embassy across the galaxy closed its doors at the same moment. Every communication channel went dark. Every human ship returned to the solar system and disappeared. For 3 days, no one heard anything from Earth. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species sent messages asking what was happening. There was no reply. On the 4th day, something emerged from behind Earth's moon. It was a fleet of ships. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands. 10,000 warships that no one had ever seen before. They had been hidden for 2 millennia, waiting for a day that humanity had hoped would never come. At the front of the fleet was a ship so large that it blocked out the stars. Its name was written on the hull, in letters that burned like fire. Humanity's regret. The Valoran Empire had kicked a sleeping giant, and now the giant was awake. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, there was a door that had not been opened in 2,000 years. It was made of metal so thick that no weapon could break it. Behind it lay the darkest secret of human history, the vault. When Supreme Commander Taewoo gave the order, machines that had been sleeping for centuries woke up. Lights flickered on in tunnels that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Computer systems that had been waiting in silence began to hum with power. Inside the vault were weapons, ships, technologies that the rest of the galaxy could not imagine. Humanity had built these things during their last great war. Before they chose peace, they had locked them away and sworn never to use them again. Now that promise was broken. Taewoo stood at the entrance of the vault with a small group of officers. Among them was a young captain named Minji. She was only 28 years old. She had joined the military because she wanted to fly ships, not because she wanted to fight. The Earth Defense Force was supposed to be ceremonial. They did parades and rescue missions. They had never fired a weapon in anger, but now Minji was looking at rows and rows of warships that could destroy entire planets. Her hands were trembling. "How did we hide all of this?" she whispered. An old man stepped forward. His name was Dong-hyun, and he was over 200 years old. Medical technology had extended human lifespans, but few people chose to live this long. Dong-hyun had stayed alive for one reason only. He was the keeper of Earth's war archives, the only living human who remembered what humanity was truly capable of. "We did not hide it," Dong-hyun said. His voice was rough and tired. "We buried it. We wanted to forget." He walked slowly between the ships, running his wrinkled hand along their cold metal hulls. Each ship had a name written on it. Names like Last Resort and Final Warning and Never Again. "Young ones do not know the truth," Dong-hyun continued. "You think we chose peace because we are kind, because we are gentle. That is not true." He stopped in front of the largest ship, Humanity's Regret. It was 3 kilometers long and shaped like a sword pointed at the stars. "We chose peace because we were afraid. Afraid of ourselves." Minji did not understand. How could humans be afraid of themselves? They were farmers and teachers. They built schools and healed the sick. They were the most peaceful species in the galaxy. Dong-hyun seemed to read her thoughts. He turned to face her with eyes that had seen too much death. "In our last war, we developed something terrible. Our scientists called it the silence. It is not a weapon. It is a state of mind. When human soldiers face death and pain and loss, something happens inside their brains. Their fear disappears. Their anger disappears. Their mercy disappears. All that remains is cold, perfect efficiency. He took a deep breath. A human in the silence does not hate the enemy. They do not feel anything at all. They simply calculate the fastest way to end the threat and execute that calculation without hesitation. They become machines of war. And they are very, very good at killing. Minji felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard of this before. It was not in any history book. The problem, Donghyun continued, is what happens afterward. When the silence ends, the human remembers everything they did. The guilt destroys them. Many take their own lives. Others lose their minds. We won our last war, but we lost a generation of young people to madness and grief. He looked at Minji with something like pity. That is why we stopped fighting. Not because we could not win, because winning cost us our souls. In a hospital on the other side of the world, Jinho opened his eyes. His body was wrapped in bandages. Machines beeped around him. For a moment, he did not remember where he was or what had happened. Then the memory came back. The blue light. The explosion. The children. He tried to sit up and cried out in pain. A nurse rushed to his side and pushed him back down. Please, sir. You must rest. Your injuries are severe. The children. Jinho gasped. Yuna. Is Yuna alive? The nurse's face was filled with sadness. The girl survived. She is safe. But the others, she could not finish the sentence. Jinho closed his eyes. 847 children. His children, gone in 3 seconds. When he opened his eyes again, they were different. The soft kindness that had lived there for 40 years was gone. In its place was something cold and hard. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. I want to speak to command, he said. His voice was flat and steady. Tell them. Admiral, Jinho, requests reactivation. The nurse looked confused. Admiral? Sir, you run an orphanage? You are not. My file is classified. Tell them the ghost of Andromeda is awake. The nurse did not understand, but she made the call. Within an hour, Supreme Commander Taewoo himself appeared at Jinho's bedside. His face was pale. It really is you, Taewoo said quietly. I read about you in the archives. I thought you were dead. I wanted to be dead, Jinho replied. I wanted to forget what I was. I built that orphanage to make something good after all the evil I had done. He tried to sit up again. This time, he succeeded despite the pain. They took that from me. They killed my children. So now I will remember what I was. And they will learn why the galaxy used to fear us. Taewoo handed him a tablet. On it was a picture of Yuna in a hospital bed. She was staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. She had not spoken since the attack. She survived because you shielded her, Taewoo said. She is asking for you. Jinho looked at the picture for a long time. His jaw tightened. I will see her before I leave. And I will make her a promise. What promise? Jinho turned to face the Supreme Commander. His eyes were like 2 pieces of cold iron. That I will end this war. One way or another, across the galaxy, the Valoran Empire finally realized something was wrong. Their spies reported that human ships were everywhere. Thousands of vessels that had appeared from nowhere. The humans were not surrendering. They were preparing for war. Empress Vorath dismissed the reports at first. How could the peaceful humans have a hidden fleet? It was impossible. Then she received the first battle report. A Valoran patrol fleet of 50 ships had encountered a single human cruiser. The human ship had destroyed all 50 vessels in less than 10 minutes. There were no survivors. The humans had not asked for surrender. They had not issued any warnings. They had simply appeared, attacked, and left without a word. The silence had returned, and the galaxy was about to remember why humanity had once been the most feared species in existence. The war began not with anger, but with quiet. Human fleets moved through Valoran space like ghosts. They did not announce themselves. They did not make demands. They simply appeared, destroyed their targets, and vanished into the darkness between stars. In the first week, humanity destroyed 47 military bases. They did not touch a single civilian target. No cities were bombed. No civilians were harmed. only soldiers and weapons and ships, but that precision was somehow more terrifying than random destruction. Captain Minji led her squadron into battle for the first time near the Velaran border. Her orders were simple. Destroy the defense station protecting the hyperspace lane. Clear the path for the main fleet. She had 12 ships under her command. The defense station had 300. Captain, her communications officer said nervously. They outnumber us 25-1. Should we wait for reinforcements? Minji stared at the tactical display. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was pounding. She was afraid. She had never killed anyone before. She had never even wanted to kill anyone. But then she thought about the children. 847 names that Commander Taewoo had read aloud. The youngest was 3 months old. Something changed inside her head. The fear disappeared. The nervousness vanished. Her hands stopped shaking. Her heartbeat slowed to a steady rhythm. Everything became very clear and very cold. All ships, she said. Her voice was flat and empty. Attack formation. Priority targets are the station's weapon systems. Execute. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. Minji's 12 ships tore through the Velaran formation like a knife through paper. They moved in perfect coordination, each pilot knowing exactly where to be and when to fire. The Valoran commanders could not understand how such a small force could be so effective. Their ships exploded one after another. Minji herself destroyed 47 enemy vessels. She flew her ship into impossible positions, dodging fire that should have killed her, hitting targets that should have been unreachable. She did not hesitate. She did not flinch. She was not a person anymore. She was a weapon. When the last Valoran ship was burning, the battle was over. It had taken 9 minutes. Minji sat in her pilot's chair and blinked. The coldness drained out of her body like water from a broken cup. She looked at her hands. They were trembling again. Then she remembered what she had done. She had killed thousands of people, living beings with families and hopes and dreams. She had ended their lives without feeling anything at all. And the worst part was that it had been so easy. Minji barely made it to the bathroom before she started vomiting. She collapsed on the floor and wept like a child. Her crew found her there an hour later, still crying. The ship's doctor, a woman named Hana, wrapped a blanket around Minji's shoulders and held her tight. "It is the silence," Hana said softly. Elder Dongyun warned us this would happen. Hana understood better than most. Her younger brother had died at the orphanage on Jeju Island. He was 15 years old. He had wanted to be a painter. Now his ashes were scattered in a crater where flowers used to grow. She had volunteered for frontline duty because she needed to do something. Anything. She could not just sit at home and grieve. How do we keep fighting if this is what it costs? Minji whispered. Hana had no answer. She just held the captain and let her cry. On another ship far across the battle lines, a man named Woojin led a very different kind of mission. He was an infiltration specialist. His team did not fight in open battles. They moved in shadows. Woojin's orders were to disable Valoran supply lines without killing anyone, unless absolutely necessary. It was a strange order for a war. But Supreme Commander Taewoo had been clear. "We are not monsters," Taewoo had said. "We will win this war with as little blood as possible. Kill only those who force us to kill." So Woojin and his team landed on Velaran supply stations in the dead of night. They sabotaged engines and weapon systems. They destroyed supplies without harming the crews. They left the Valoran soldiers alive but helpless, unable to fight or flee. It drove the Valoran commanders insane. How could they fight an enemy they could not even see? One Velaran admiral named Kira Veloth began to understand what was happening. She was different from other Velaran officers. She did not enjoy cruelty. She had joined the military to protect her people, not to conquer others. When she studied the reports of human attacks, she noticed a pattern. The humans never struck first against civilians. They only attacked military targets. They showed mercy to surrendering soldiers. They were fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. But even with that restraint, they were winning. Easily. "We made a terrible mistake," Kyra said to her staff. "We attacked their children. We thought it would break them. Instead, we woke something that should have stayed asleep." Her officers did not understand. They had been taught that humans were weak. That peace had made them soft. They are not soft. Kyra continued. They are controlled. There is a difference. A predator that chooses not to hunt is still a predator. We just reminded them what they are. On Earth, Jinho recovered from his injuries faster than anyone expected. The doctors said it was impossible. He should have needed months of rest. Instead, he was walking within a week. Hate keeps me alive, he told Yuna when he visited her hospital room. She was sitting up now, but she still did not speak. She just stared out the window at the sky where the alien ship had come from. Jinho sat beside her bed and took her hand. I am going away for a while, he said. There are things I need to do. Bad things. Things I promised myself I would never do again. Yuna turned to look at him. Her eyes were red from crying. But I want you to know something. Everything I do for you. For the other children who died. I will make sure this never happens again. Not to us. Not to anyone. Yuna squeezed his hand. She still did not speak, but a single tear rolled down her cheek. Jinho kissed her forehead and stood up. When I come back, we will rebuild the orphanage. We will plant new flowers and raise new children. The universe is not kind, Yuna. But we can be kind anyway. Remember that. He walked out of the room without looking back. 3 days later, Admiral Jinho took command of a strike force of 500 ships. Their mission was to punch through the Valoran defensive lines and reach the enemy homeworld. The Valoran Empire had been undefeated for 600 years. They had conquered dozens of species. They believed they were invincible. They had never met humans in battle before. That was about to change. 3 months into the war, the Valoran Empire was dying. They had lost 60% of their military. Their supply lines were shattered. Their soldiers refused to fight. Rumors spread through the ranks that human pilots could not be killed, that they felt no pain and no fear, that they were demons wearing human skin. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humans were just very, very good at war. They had spent 2,000 years trying to forget that fact. Now the galaxy was learning why. Other species watched from the edges of the conflict. They remembered old stories that had been passed down through generations, legends of a species so dangerous that the entire galaxy had once united to stop them. The war had ended not because the humans lost, but because they simply stopped fighting one day. They had chosen peace. Now those old species understood the truth. Humanity had not been defeated. They had defeated themselves. They had looked at what they were becoming and felt ashamed, so they had put away their weapons and tried to be better. The Valoran Empire had made them pick those weapons back up. On the Valoran homeworld, Empress Vorath sat on her throne and pretended everything was fine. But her hands trembled when she held her wine glass. Her advisors had stopped bringing her reports because every report was worse than the last. Her son, Crown Prince Varath, watched her from across the room. He was young, only 30 years old, and he had always disagreed with his mother's cruelty. He had tried to stop the attack on Earth. He had begged her to choose diplomacy instead of violence. She had laughed at him and called him weak. Now their empire was burning, and she still refused to admit she was wrong. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a massive hall floating in neutral space. They had one goal: to convince Earth to accept a ceasefire before humanity destroyed everything. Ambassador Jiho arrived alone. He was a small man with gray hair and quiet eyes. He looked like someone's grandfather. The other ambassadors had expected a warrior. Instead, they got a diplomat who bowed politely and took his seat without speaking. The council leader, a tall insect-like being named Threx, addressed the room. "We have called this meeting to discuss peace," Threx said. "The war between Earth and the Valoran Empire threatens stability across the galaxy. We ask both sides to..." "Stop," Jiho said quietly. The room went silent. No one interrupted Council Leader Threx. It was not done. Jiho stood up slowly. He pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the table. A hologram appeared above it. "Before we discuss peace," Jiho said, "I want everyone here to understand why we are at war." The hologram showed a sunny day on Jeju Island. Children were playing in a garden. A 12-year-old girl was teaching younger children to fold paper cranes. Everyone was laughing. Then the sky darkened. A ship appeared. A beam of blue light came down. The recording included audio. The ambassadors heard screaming. Hundreds of children screaming as fire consumed them. The sound lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like forever. When the recording ended, several ambassadors were weeping. Others had turned away. One had left the room entirely. Jiho let the silence stretch. 847 children, he said. That is why we are fighting. Not for territory. Not for resources. Not for pride. For 847 children who will never grow up. He looked around the room at the horrified faces. Earth has one demand. Only one. The Empress must travel to the ruins of the orphanage. She must kneel before the memorial where our children are buried. She must apologize to the dead. The Valoran ambassador jumped to his feet. That is an insult. The Empress kneels to no one. Then the war continues, Jiho said calmly. And when it ends, there will be no Valoran Empire left. He picked up his device and walked out of the room without another word. On the front lines, Admiral Jinho's strike force broke through the final Valoran defensive perimeter. His ships had fought their way across half the empire. They had destroyed everything in their path. Now only open space stood between them and the enemy homeworld. Jinho sat in his command chair and stared at the stars. He had killed so many people in the past 3 months. More than he had killed in his entire career before the peace. The weight of it pressed down on his chest like a stone. A message came through his communication system. It was from Yuna. She had finally spoken. She had asked to send him a recording. Jinho played it in his private quarters with the door locked. Yuna's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired and sad, but she was not crying anymore. "Grandfather," she said. Her voice was rough from disuse. "I know you think you are doing this for me, for the other children. And maybe that was true at the beginning." She paused and looked down at her hands. "But I have been thinking about the children we lost. About what they would want. Unji wanted to be a doctor. Minjae wanted to be a singer. Little Somi just wanted to grow tall enough to reach the cookie jar." A small, sad smile crossed her face. "I do not think they would want this. They would not want more children to lose their parents. More families to be destroyed. They would want the killing to stop." Her eyes met the camera. "I do not want revenge anymore, grandfather. I just want peace. I want to go home and plant flowers where the orphanage used to be. Please, find another way." The recording ended. Jinho sat in the darkness for a long time. He thought about Unji and Minjae and little Somi. He thought about all the names he had memorized. He thought about what he had become. Then he made a decision. The message from Yuna had not been encrypted. It had been broadcast on an open channel. By accident or by fate. It had been intercepted by every ship in the region, including the Valoran fleet. Admiral Kyra Veloth heard the recording on her command ship. She listened to a child ask for peace instead of revenge. She watched the girl's sad smile. And something shifted inside her heart. That night, she sent a secret message to Admiral Jinho. "I want to help end this war. My Empress is mad. She will never surrender. But there is another way. Contact me on this frequency at midnight." Jinho stared at the message. It could be a trap. The Velorans had never shown mercy before, but Yuna's words echoed in his mind. "Find another way." He sent his reply. At midnight, 2 admirals from opposite sides of a war talked for the first time. They discovered that neither of them wanted more death. They discovered that both of them were tired of killing, and they made a plan to end the war not with destruction, but with change. The Valoran homeworld was beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. White clouds drifted across green continents. Billions of people lived there, children, families, ordinary citizens who had never asked for war. Admiral Jinho looked down at that world from the bridge of humanity's regret. His finger hovered over a button on his command console. One press, and the planet cracker weapon would fire. One press, and billions of lives would end. Supreme Commander Tewu's order had been clear. If the Empress did not surrender within 1 hour, Jinho was authorized to fire. The clock was ticking. On the planet below, Empress Vorath sat in her throne room and refused to move. Her generals begged her to surrender. Her advisors warned her that the humans would not bluff. She did not listen. "I am the Empress," she said. I kneel to no one. Let them destroy us. History will remember that we never surrendered. Her son, Prince Verath, stood in the corner of the room and watched his mother choose pride over the lives of billions. He thought about Admiral Kyra Veloth's secret message. He thought about the plan they had made. It was time. Verath walked across the throne room and stood before his mother. His palace guards followed him with their weapons drawn. What is this? Verath demanded. This is the end, Verath said quietly. I am placing you under arrest for crimes against the Velaran people. You started a war we cannot win. You refused peace when it was offered. You would let our planet burn rather than admit you were wrong. Vorath's eyes widened with rage. You dare? I am your mother. You are a monster, Verath replied. And I will not let you kill our people. The guards surrounded the Empress. She screamed and cursed, but they held her firmly. Within minutes, the throne room was secured. Prince Verath broadcast a message across all channels to his own people and to the human fleet above. This is Crown Prince Verath. Empress Vorath has been removed from power. I am assuming control of the Valoran Empire. I hereby accept Earth's terms unconditionally. The war is over. On the bridge of humanity's regret. Jinho closed his eyes and let out a breath he had been holding for 3 months. His hand moved away from the button. Stand down, he ordered his fleet. Hold fire. Commander Tewu's response came through immediately. Confirmed, Admiral. Well done. But Jinho did not feel like he had done anything well. He felt tired. Empty. The war was over. But the weight of everything he had done still pressed against his chest. 1 week later, a transport ship landed on Jeju Island. The ruins of the orphanage had been cleared. In their place stood a memorial, a wall of stone with 847 names carved into it. Flowers had been planted all around it. The first green shoots were just beginning to break through the soil. Yuna stood at the entrance in a simple white dress. She had asked to be here. She needed to see this. The transport doors opened. Guards in Earth uniforms escorted a prisoner down the ramp. Empress Vorath was dressed in plain gray clothes. Her hands were bound in front of her. Her proud face was pale and hollow. People had gathered to watch. They stood in silence as the former Empress was led to the memorial. Some of them had lost children in the attack. Some of them had lost students, neighbors, friends. No one threw stones. No one cursed. They just watched. Vorath stopped in front of the wall of names. The guards pushed her down onto her knees in the grass. For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind blew through the empty space where children used to play. Then Yuna walked forward. She was carrying something in her hands, a single white flower. She stopped in front of the kneeling Empress. Their eyes met. Do you know what you did? Yuna asked. Her voice was quiet but steady. Vorath said nothing. Her jaw was tight with humiliation. You killed my family, Yuna continued. 847 brothers and sisters. You took everything from me. She looked down at the flower in her hands. I wanted you to die. For a long time, that was all I could think about. I wanted you to suffer like they suffered. I wanted revenge. Yuna took a deep breath. But revenge will not bring them back. Hate will not fill the empty spaces where they used to be. If I spend my life being angry, then you will have killed me too, just slower. She held out the flower. So instead, I choose to live. I choose to remember them with love instead of anger. I choose to be kind in a universe that is not kind, because that is what they would have wanted. She placed the flower gently in Vorath's bound hands. This is not forgiveness. I do not forgive you. But I will not let you take anything more from me. This is my choice. My victory. You do not get to decide who I become. Yuna turned and walked back to stand beside Jinho, who had watched the entire scene with tears running down his face. Vorath knelt in the grass, holding a single white flower, and for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. The galaxy watched. Every species saw what happened. They had expected vengeance. They had expected humanity to destroy everything in their path. Instead, they saw a child offer a flower to the person who had killed her family. In the months that followed, Earth did not conquer the Velaran Empire. Instead, they helped rebuild it. Prince Verath became the new emperor and worked with human advisors to create a peaceful government. Schools were built, Hospitals were opened. Children from both species learned to play together. A new galactic compact was established. Its first law was simple. Any attack on civilian children by any species would be met with the unified response of all member worlds. Earth signed first. The Valoran Empire signed second. Within a year, every major species had joined. Admiral Jinho retired for the final time. He returned to Jeju Island and began rebuilding the orphanage with his own hands. Stone by stone. Room by room. Yuna stayed to help him. Captain Minji, now promoted to Admiral herself, came to visit on a quiet spring day. She found Jinho planting a tree at the entrance of the new building. "I heard what happened here," she said. "What Yuna did. It was the bravest thing I have ever seen." Jinho patted the soil around the tree's roots. "She is braver than any soldier. It takes no courage to hate. It takes everything to choose love, when hate would be easier." Minji watched him work in silence for a while. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her for months. "Do you regret it? Everything we did? The war?" Jinho stood up and wiped the dirt from his hands. He looked at the memorial wall, then at the new orphanage rising behind it. "I regret that we had to remind the galaxy what we are," he said slowly. "I regret every life I took. I will carry that weight until I die." He turned to look at Yuna, who was teaching a group of new children how to fold paper cranes in the garden. "But I do not regret showing them what we choose to be. We are not defined by our capacity for destruction. We are defined by what we do when that destruction is no longer necessary." He smiled sadly. "Humanity can kill worlds. We proved that. But we can also heal them. That is what makes us different. That is why the galaxy will never forget us." 200 years later, a young alien scholar discovered the ancient records of the human-Valoran War. He traveled to Earth to learn more. He found an old Valoran ambassador who had lived through those times. "Why does no one attack Earth anymore?" the scholar asked. "They are peaceful. They have no army. They would be easy to conquer." The ambassador laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Easy? You understand nothing. Humanity destroyed our empire in 3 months. 3 months. We were the greatest military power in the galaxy, and they took us apart like children breaking toys." He leaned forward. "But that is not why we fear them. We fear them because of what they did after they won. They did not enslave us. They did not take revenge. They rebuilt our schools. They healed our sick. They raised our children." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Humanity is not terrifying because they can destroy. Every species can destroy. Humanity is terrifying because they can forgive. They looked at the people who murdered their children and chose mercy. That is power beyond anything we understand." He sat back and shook his head. "No one will ever attack Earth again. Not because they cannot fight, but because when they do fight, they win. And when they win, they show you that you never needed to fight at all. They break your army and then break your heart with kindness." The scholar wrote all of this down. He titled his paper, "The Sleeping Giant: Why Humanity Remains the Most Feared Species in the Galaxy, Despite 2,000 Years of Peace." And on Jeju Island, where flowers still bloom over the graves of 847 children, a new generation learned to fold paper cranes and dream of stars, knowing that they were protected by a species that had chosen love over war, and mercy over revenge, and hope over despair. That was humanity's true power. Not the ability to destroy worlds, the courage to heal them instead.